a new mission for you two. There's been a very serious topic that has been causing many controversies around the world. Last year, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, you might know it as NASA, spent a whopping $7.2 billion on space exploration. Most say it's an issue that is worth spending this money on. Some say it's not. Your mission? Find out whether you two think it's worth spending this amount of money on space. Good luck, agents. You heard the man. Let's go!
So NASA spent $17.2 billion. That's a lot of money. To truly understand how much this really is, we should look at what you could do with all this cash.
Imagine you won the lottery. A $17.2 billion lottery. What would you do with all that money?
Would you buy 25 replicas of Tiger Woods' $40 million house? What about 2,500 Lamborghinis? Maybe the world's rarest Pokemon.
Would you give it to charity, or would you keep every last penny?
Right now, NASA's using all this money right now to research in space. There is a lot of controversy on whether this money is worth spending on space or not. But what else would we spend this on?
Some say we should be spending this money on more important things in our world, such as ending poverty or world hunger.
Others say that by exploring space and learning about our origins, we could then better understand how we live and maybe find a place to stay if we ever had to leave Earth.
So we can't decide whose side we're on until we look at both sides.
Let's start with the past.
One of the first contributed innovators in 1564 was Galileo Galilei. He was the first scientist to create an invention that allows us to see into space, now known as today's telescope. Galileo's first telescope, made in 1609, modeled after telescopes produced in other parts of Europe that could magnify objects only 3 times. Later that year, he created a telescope that could magnify objects 20 times. With this telescope, he was able to look at the moon, discover the 4 satellites of Jupiter, observe a supernova, verify the phase of Venus, and even discover sunspots. With his discoveries, he provided the Copernican system, meaning that the universe was geocentric, which states that the Earth and other planets revolve around the Sun. Thanks to Galileo's work, we now have a better outlook and understanding on the space that surrounds us.
So Galileo really did help us a lot. You know, I heard about another guy who was influential and contributed to space sciences.
Another historical figure that impacted scientists around the world is Albert Einstein. 4 major areas of science that Albert Einstein contributed to are light, time, energy, and gravity. With Einstein's early fascination on light at an early age, it led to the discovery of how the light speed itself always travels the same speed. In 1905, what he called his first thought experiment, he came up with the special theory of relativity, in which he stated that light is constant and that it is not possible to travel faster than the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. Einstein's theory states that time is not consistent as is light. The faster one goes, the slower time is, even though that person does not feel it as being different. One of Einstein's well-known accomplishments is the formula E equals mc squared that shows the relationship between energy and mass. It was thought that energy and mass were different. However, Einstein's theory states that energy and mass are merely different forms of the same thing. Albert Einstein was first to improve the theories of Newton and proposed a new theory of gravity in 1915, which is now called the general theory of relativity. General relativity describes gravity as a warping of space itself, not as a force. He pictured space as a 3-dimensional version of a thin rubber band sheet. If you were to put a heavy object on a sheet, it would make a dent, and therefore an object's path would be affected by that dent. So orbits around the sun because the space around the sun is curved in a 2D equivalent of a tunnel or a bathroom.
Interesting. But although those historical figures were passionate about science and learning about space, there are still people around the world today that think it's a total waste of money. So, to see why, we have to take a look at the present time.
A great example is that the fact that further evidence of the Big Bang Theory was proven thanks to the help of a newer Hubble telescope. We're now that much closer to proving how a universe was created. The theory is that 14 billion years ago, the world expanded and extrapolated rapidly, expanded and cooled, going from very small and hot to the large universe as we now know it.
Using this information, we can better understand not only our world, but other galaxies that possibly exist. This could lead to us possibly finding another planet that is sustainable of life, maybe even allowing us to colonize there.
Another important innovation of today is the International Space Station. The International Space Station, originally launched in 1994, is a huge station in space created for humans to live and work in outer space for long periods of time. The station is super important to have because it allows us to study how outer space affects the human body over long periods of time.
This is a huge building block for space exploration, because if we discover if we can survive in space, there is a chance we could colonize on other planets, or maybe even find another planet to live on that's bigger and better than Earth. There are currently 10 astronauts living in the space station, attempting to live in outer space for the maximum time ever attempted, 3 full weeks. They're being carefully studied to see how their bodies react and change due to the drastic conditions of space.
This space station is also especially important because it means that we could explore deeper space without having to return to Earth for the supplies needed, and possibly leading to further and greater discovery.
So let's take a little pause from the facts and look at the opposing side. There are still a lot of people out there that thinks we could be spending the $17.2 billion on solving problems that we have today. One might argue and say that we could use all this money, or even a small portion of it, to stop end world hunger.
Why would we spend this extraordinary amount of money on tests on space that might not even have a benefit? Or maybe we can use this money to help stop pollution and global warming. Why investigate open space when we could be helping make our planet stronger and healthier? Why doesn't the government spend this amount of money on other things? So maybe it's not worth it today. With all the arguments going on, and since both sides have strong arguments, it's difficult to decide based on the facts of the past and the present.
Well, Agent Loken, there is one place we haven't checked yet.
And where's that, Agent Elicum?
The future!
The thought of leaving planet Earth seems unreal and unimaginable. We are in the middle of global economical crisis and another disaster is being prepared for humankind. If all stays the same as it is now, a second planet will be needed to support the living if prophecies of events from Mayans to Nostradamus come true.
Scientists have discovered a warm and rocky second Earth circling a star, a find that they believe dramatically boosts the prospects that we are not alone. The planet is the most Earth-like ever spotted, and is thought to have perfect conditions of water, an essential ingredient for life. Researchers detected the planet orbiting one of Earth's nearest stars, a cool red dwarf called Gliese 581, 20 light-years away in the constellation of Libra.
But that's not all that could happen in the future. Space tourism is an original idea brought up in the 1960s. It's the idea that in the future, people can pay not to go on in space, but stay there for long periods of time in a space hotel. Currently, people can pay to go into space, staying there for one orbit around Earth. However, it would cost you anywhere from $10 to $10,000.
The fact that some people have this money to just throw around for a few days in space is shocking. However, the most shocking bit is space tourism is still growing. In Japan, the possibility of a Space Berlin hotel is being investigated, mostly about accommodations and transportation. They say that this has great potential in the long mid-term, because currently space tourism is gaining an income of around $34 billion, a number estimated in 1995. And future space tourism and accommodations could triple that amount.
As a minimum for your future space tour, you would have to pay at least $20 million only for one orbit. You would stay in lodges, which up to 100 others would share for this experience, which would be expected to grow in full-on hotels holding several hundred guests. This would eventually evolve into space theme parks holding several thousand people. Think about it. 20 million times several thousand people is around 20 billion per thousand people, if not more. What else could we be spending this on?
As the grim news of growing job losses mounts in Canada, the federal Conservative government is continuing the politics of denial that marked last autumn's election campaign. Especially troubling for the working class is that opposition political parties including the trade union-based the New Democratic Party, are offering no substantial alternative. The economy is collapsing by the numbers, social wages are being threatened, and the forces of the grim economic news. And the message from the federal government is, don't worry, be happy.
Is this supposed to lighten us up a bit? In the first 2 months of 2009 were a disaster for working people. 240,000 workers lost their jobs. 240 workers lost their jobs! This job losses in January were the largest monthly loss ever in Canada. Scientists and researchers have found a new way to possibly exploding raw materials from asteroids and planetoids in space known as asteroid mining. Could this be a future job for unemployed workers?
Asteroid mining refers to the possibility of exploiting raw material from asteroids and planetoids and may be economical sources for large space construction projects. Minerals and volatiles from the asteroid or comet could be mined to provide space construction material such as iron, nickel, and titanium. Extracting water and oxygen can sustain the lives of prospector astronaut on the site by extracting hydrogen and oxygen. They can be used as rocket fuel.
New planets? Space traveling? Asteroid mining? Maybe spending all this money is worth it.
I can see why people think it's not a good idea for today, but if we just look to the future and realize how successful we were in the past, maybe they'd see what we see.
So, Agent Ellicott, have we decided on a verdict?
Well, Agent Logan, I think we have.
$17.2 billion is definitely worth spending on space! Even if we don't spend all of this on space today, it's completely worth it in the long run.
Sure, we should care about our planet and such, but we need to be concerned about our problems going on now, but also in the future. We really need this technology that we're discovering today and tomorrow.